Our episode begins with some orbital bombardment of what could be Delta City until we cut to a fleeing alien. Despite being an alien, she's running through the wreckage in heels because it could be nearly 1,000 years ago halfway across the galaxy, but some things are just universal. She's looking for her husband, Gedrin. He's trying to get everybody into biopods so that they can survive in stasis.
We're out of time.
Do you think we'll dream?
I don't know.
That's something we tended to file on unimportant in the face of our annihilation. Really, you might as well ask if you're worried that someone is going to draw dicks on your face while you're asleep. After the titles, we discover Voyager flying through the colon of the galaxy. They got sucked in somehow and discovered that it's full of what's likely centuries-old bits of destroyed starships.
I'd like to avoid becoming part of this garbage stream. Can you find a way out?
Funny, she said the same thing about airing on UPN. They come across another ship piloted by aliens made entirely out of hardened toothpaste, who are naturally jittery about Voyager's presence. At Janeway's request, they help push them back into normal space, which succeeds, but to Voyager's amazement, they've traveled 200 light-years in 5 minutes.
We've got a long journey ahead of us, and I was wondering if we could negotiate passage through this underspace of yours.
Lower your shields. Prepare to be boarded.
So that's a no, then. They want to expunge all data related to the underspace corridor, and if Voyager refuses, they'll destroy it. Janeway orders them to return fire, but the other ship is way too maneuverable for them to fight back effectively, and it brings in 2 more friends. So they decide to hide on the surface of a nearby radioactive planet. Luckily for them, the aliens' shields can't stand the radiation, and they scurry off for now, but are no doubt already working on finding a way to reach or destroy Voyager since they're remaining in orbit over them. Well, given the severity of that ass-kicking, Voyager's got no choice then but to just land and hope that they can fix the ship in time. That's when they discover the place is in the midst of a nuclear winter.
How long ago?
From the rate of radiogenic decay, 892 years.
You can set your watch by Armageddon.
And Tom, make sure B'Elanna has enough help in engineering. I want those warp engines back online.
She's got a whole department of engineers. The thing about the Paris is a savant thing is that it's a zero-effort running gag on my part. The show really does think that if you throw Tom Paris at a problem solved. When he's finished repairing this ship and treating all of the wounded, his next job is no doubt going to be to find a way to cleanse the radiation from this planet and maybe design the statue of Janeway that will go in the town square for that feat. Anyway, Harry discovers that there are faint life readings coming from beneath the surface of this place.
You're going down there.
If somebody survived this catastrophe, they might need our help.
What help? You can't even take care of yourselves right now, you bunch of rubes. Well, naturally, this is the place from the beginning, and obviously it's been longer than the 5 planned years. The place runs off geothermal energy. That explains why it's still running, except for the fact that it hasn't been maintained in 900 years. Seven decides to see if she could activate one of these things, and wakes up our buddy Gedrin, which Janeway disapproves of. And look, I'll be the first to admit it's something to think about first. Even with Amelia Earhart, they at least stopped and thought about it before going ahead with it. But let's store this nugget away for later, all right? Gedrin's a little shocked to find out that most of a millennium has passed instead of just 5 years, but at least he didn't reach Dave Lister levels. That's comforting. His wife didn't fare quite as well, but that's probably for the best. He'd really get an earful over screwing things up this badly. They bring him to sickbay where he reveals that he's part of the Vaudoir, and he recognizes the Borg from their confrontations in the past. Seven doesn't recognize his species, though. Their data from 900 years ago is fragmentary, because they may be around for thousands of centuries, but 9 centuries, whew, long time. It seems the aliens that chased Voyager here were partly responsible for the annihilation of this planet, and then claimed the subspace corridors, as he calls them, for themselves. Janeway notes what they found down there, 1,000 pods, ships, weapons, and he admits they were a final battalion and their families that were meant to hide out for 5 years and then slip through while the alliance against them fought for the scraps of their civilization, and then hopefully try to rebuild elsewhere.
It's a shame she didn't show more courage at the end.
Given the circumstances.
Well, that's no excuse.
Pardon me for saying this, but that seems a bit heartless.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
When it rains, do you run from doorway to doorway, trying to stay dry, getting wet all the while? Or do you just accept the fact that it's raining and walk with dignity.
Brain's one thing. Plasma bombs are something else.
But the principle is the same.
No, not particularly, since A, unless you're the Wicked Witch of the West, it isn't really a problem, and B, I've never seen anyone look dignified in the rain. The purpose of this, though, is to be the first hint that the Vaudois believe that they should not fear death. They openly admire the Klingons when they learn about them. The Vaudois fear no one.
I won't hurt you.
But I have sensitive skin. Oh, where's my medicated undershirt? I need it so my nipples don't chafe. Ooh. Speaking of things to make you shrink back in terror, Neelix has been cooking, and Gedrin is surprised to see a Talaxian. He calls them by a different name that Neelix recognizes, Talaxazal or something. I don't know, I figured it'd be assholes, but maybe it was lost in the translation.
But Vaudois is a word in the old tongue. It means foolish.
Let's use it in a sentence. It would be Vaudois to say that to him right now, Neelix. Perfectly timed to save us from this diplomacy, the aliens in orbit start bombarding the surface, trying to hit Voyager with a lucky shot. Well, fortunately, there is a satellite in orbit directly over the city, and after 900 years, it's still in the same spot, and working. My people named it the Contrivance, Captain. Gedrin can enter an activation code for the satellite, and then they can use its sensors to fire back and try to drive off the aliens.
I'm a few centuries out of date.
Huh? It's technology you've never seen before. No one is surprised you don't know how it works, and 900 years ago it would have been ink scratched onto a stretched sheepskin, so... Anyway, this plan works and cripples the lead ship, but Janeway's surprised to hear that Gedrin is eager to finish them off. He's scared of them returning with more ships, but she figures they're going to be gone by then. Ergo, that's not my problem. So Gedrin makes an offer. Awaken his people, help them leave this planet, and in return, they'll show them the corridors and be able to knock at least 1,000 light-years off their trip back.
Let's wake up your battalion.
So let's be clear about this. Awakening the civilization and readying their ships was a deliberate decision on Janeway's part. She could have put Gedrin back in his cave to do whatever he wished, but she's chosen to get involved based upon the gains that offers. I'm not criticizing any of that. I just want us to save that for later. When they look at these warships inside, Chakotay is noticeably leery of this plan and recounts a tale, but thank God for all of our sakes, it's not another made-up tale of his fictional people. It's the titular tale of the dragon's teeth, which were sown in a field and grew into soldiers because the Greeks had a lot of wine and free time on their hands to think up crazy shit. This brings two more head honchos into the mix, one of whom is Gaul, the evil-looking one. No surprise he'll become a recurring villain on Stargate Universe.
Well, let's get started. We've got a civilization to rebuild.
I assume it's like tearing one down, only backwards, right? This'll be a snap. They awaken 200 of the people, but it seems Naomi doesn't like the Vaudois children.
Why not?
I just don't.
Well, that's not good enough. I'm the ship's ambassador.
Of all the things you could have said, it's all about me, really should not have been one of them.
They called you names.
Names?
They said everybody from your planet was stupid.
From the mouths of babes. And does Naomi even have a mom anymore, or did someone murder her and shove her in a closet? Dragon's Teeth was originally intended to be a two-parter. Then it was decided there wasn't enough for it for a two-parter, so they made it a single episode. Then they realized, no, wait, there is enough for a two-parter. But now it's too late, so sorry, try to fit everything into this overcrowded episode. There's a term for being jerked around by Rick Berman. It's called Rickrolled. I mention this now because they need to set the stage for the revelation of why exactly an alliance would form against these people 900 years ago. One that the Vaudois believed would collapse and then lead to infighting in as little as 5 years. The reason, naturally, is the Vaudois are the bad guys. And as if Chakotay's Dragon's Teeth warning wasn't enough, the discussion of admiring the Klingons and their attitudes towards death are put together to help plant the seed. But since there's little time for it to grow, well, they have to throw a lot of crap on there to make sure there's enough fertilizer to grow, to extend the metaphor. The next stop is when Neelix starts reading his people's history connected with legends about the Vaudois. But obviously that will take him a while since his lips get tired, so let's cut to the preparations for the mission. With so many ships here now, it looks like it'll be a fight for them to escape. But Tuvok puts together a plan that he thinks could work. Except Gall is worried that something could happen to Voyager during the fight, in which case they'd be defenseless. So he asks for photon torpedoes, but Janeway refuses. So he demands photon torpedoes, and she says, "Screw you," and refuses. So when the Vaudois confer in private to discuss what happens afterwards, Gall suggests that they take over Voyager and use that. After all, it's worked so well for the Voyager crew against these aliens, hasn't it? Neelix talks to 7 of 9 about what he found, so she digs into the Borg history to compare it with what they might know. And that, of course, is why the Borg have been transformed from a power that has existed for 100 millennia into one that was barely scraping by less than 1 millennia ago. Because 7 would have accurate information on who they are otherwise. And if we have to completely annihilate most of their history, oh well, can't make an omelet without taking a big dump on the eggs, can we? Anyway, what she found paints the Vaudois as an aggressive race that preyed upon others, and the Alliance was an act of self-defense. Gedrin says that they just want a new start right now, but Janeway's not so sure that they won't prey upon Voyager while it's under attack, which is actually their entire plan. So she tells Gall that he needs to deactivate the weapons on all but 10 of their ships, the 10 that will be participating in the battle. He tells her to go to hell and soon launches a strike, against Voyager rather than against the gathering ships in orbit. This leads to the beginning of our action-packed finale, which begins with Tuvok spin doctoring rather nicely.
We've disabled 4 of their ships.
Yes, they are disabled, because they've been blown to bits, so technically they're disabled. Has he gotten some code down with the captain because he knows her so well? Disable them, Tuvok. Yes, Captain. Targeting their warp cores. Make sure they're unharmed. I'll bring you their skins right away, Captain. But they are outnumbered, and those ships were built for combat, so Voyager's in trouble, and Janeway decides to negotiate a new deal, this time with the aliens against the Vaudois, while Gedrin is standing right next to her. But it's all right. He's going to side against his own people and leave them trapped and helpless on a radioactive planet with hostile aliens that now know they're there up in orbit ready to bomb them. Sure, that's completely believable. While we're staring in stunned silence, we're cleverly distracted from the fact that transporters, which have trouble going through large energy bursts, radiation, and shields, have now just beamed through all 3 to put Tuvok and Gedrin back down in his cave so he can use the satellite again. This time to help the aliens target the Vaudois ships and their bunker, too. Hooray! He's helping the aliens to murder their own children. Well, that's what they get for not liking Neelix. Well, we need to kill a few minutes still before we escape, so next up is a technobabble discussion on the bridge of using the radiation in the atmosphere as a power source. Torres, I need you to make these changes for my crazy awesome plan. I'll get to them, Captain, but I'm typing one-handed right now. Ah! What? I'm eating cookies with the other hand. Oh, good, that's fine. I always eat cookies while I masturbate. Ah! Anyway, Gedrin is killed by all the blasts. Some of the Vaudois try to get to their ships to flee, and Voyager figures this is a big case of not my problem, and bugs out once they clear the atmosphere. But later 7 detects that over 50 Vaudois ships survived and escaped through the subspace corridors. So this is the point where parody Janeway would of course say, I just want you to know, 7, I blame you for this. But actual Janeway is here, so she says, I just want you to know, 7, I blame you for this. 7 set forth a chain of events that nearly destroyed the ship. But it should be noted that this chain of events saved Voyager, because otherwise Voyager wouldn't have had that satellite in order to strike back while they were helpless on the surface of the planet, remember? If Gedrin hadn't been there, they would have died. It was Janeway's decision to awaken and arm these people that set forth a chain of events that nearly destroyed the ship. But I hope you see the important distinction here. 7 acted out of a sense of compassion for a lost species, whereas Janeway acted out of pure self-interest. And that intent makes all the difference. She's the captain. It's her call. But that Laurel and Hardy spin doctoring, this is another fine mess you've gotten me into, 7, is only outdone by the ominous sounding yet completely hollow, I doubt we've seen the last of the Vaudois, As far as the show is concerned, yeah, we have. Post-episode follow-up. Stupid Neelix's moment is just blurting out that Vaudouar means foolish, in the same episode where he mentions he's the ship ambassador. I think he's in that job less for the diplomacy and more of the getting out of parking tickets, diplomatic immunity kind of stuff. Final score for Dragon's Teeth is 5 out of 10. Flashy with some kernels of good ideas that are stuck in a script that's half-baked, both in the usual sense and the sense that this thing was not finished when they started work on producing it. Plot holes, silly behavior, stupid dialogue, they all conspire against what probably could have been a very strong outing. But by season 6, this is really par for the course, thus making this an average episode of Voyager.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
I'm afraid.